first off, a few words about helping organize this forum. We've got all of the candidates here, State for Senator Williams, who had scheduled conflict. He sent his policy director on order to speak on his behalf and relay the senator's positions. I'm going to let the candidates introduce themselves. They've got 2 minutes for opening statements. After that, we're going to jump to questions. Questions will range from, we'll have answers that will range from 30 seconds to a minute and a half. It's not a lot of time, we've got a lot of time to cover. And then we're wrapping up with some closing statements. A couple of questions at the end are going to be what I call jump ball questions. So if you want in on those, just let me know. But if you want to pass on those, you can too. The questions at the start, first half of the forum here, we'll go round by round. So we'll start with the state manager, state with this kind of zigzag back and forth until we cover everything.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the invitation to be here for better mobility. I've been a very big fan of mobility and the ability of people to get on bicycles and walk around the city of Philadelphia. I'm a walker myself, don't have a bike. But the first time that I saw our new bike lanes on Spruce Street in center of the city of Philadelphia, I was absolutely delighted. I'm so pleased that the coalition was able to get those bike lanes because my neighbors are triathletes and bicycle lovers, and they love the addition of those bike lanes in town. In addition to that, I think it's important to say that I'm thrilled to have attended the dedication the other day of the huge grant from the Knight and the William Penn Foundations to enhance our parks and recreational activities, including better mobility places like the Reading Viaduct, and of course Barton Gardens, Parkside, the Broad Noble Station, and of course the Schoolfield River Trail. For mobility for myself, I think that one of the issues that faced me directly was the fact that my husband had a stroke and he was in a wheelchair, and I couldn't push him any place in Center City, Philadelphia that didn't involve shifting him backwards to get over high curves. And that was really, really difficult. And I'm very grateful that these new ramps were put in, although I must confess some of them were put in better than others. At least I was able to get him from one street to another. I salute your program. I endorse virtually every aspect of it. And when I'm elected mayor, I intend to implement the greatest part of it with your cooperation and obviously with your input and your advice and counsel.
Thank you. Candidates, Sarah Stewart here in the front, so go on back to sign. We got about 30 seconds left. Hold on.
Good evening, everyone. A lot of people know Senator Anthony Wiggins, but a lot of people don't know him. So I want to introduce you to something. He is a lifelong Philadelphian, born in Southwest Philadelphia. His father, Hardy Wiggins, was an attorney and public servant. His mother, a retired public school teacher, who still works in environmental issues to this day. He's running for mayor after 25 years currently as a state representative and a state senator, and a second-ranking Democrat in the state senate. The interesting thing about this race is now he's running as a mayor, and his vision, the theme for this campaign is One Philadelphia, which really is embodied in the better mobility agenda. The idea here is to reject the false choices that we faced, the silos in which we find government operating, and begin the tough work of bringing Philadelphians together, of bringing city managers and agencies together to address the difficult issues facing the city, which include equity and access across the city of Philadelphia. His role as mayor will be to improve the quality of life in every neighborhood across the city. And that's at the core of the better mobility agenda, whether it's Vision Zero, whether it's investing in the streets department, and absolutely look forward today to sharing Tony's vision for One Philadelphia and more accessible.
Thank you, Judge Diaz.
Thank you very much. I've been a great proponent throughout my life of public transportation, and in fact was heavily involved in the legislation when I was there in '78 that provided access to folks who were disabled. Those buses that had those roundabout things that come up and down, it was a result of a young man from Philadelphia who went down to visit me, and we had an opportunity to talk to the Department of Transportation, and that was done. The solution the other way would have been for people to have a transport to the buses, and so that was not really an accessible process. I've been involved in making sure that there's an integrated system of processing not only the traffic, but the bicycles and other pedestrian walkways, so that there's protection with regard to that issue. And I do ride bikes, and I am a 3-mile rider pretty much up and down the Forbidden Drive where I live, and have taken that Forbidden Drive all the way down to Center City. I think it's important that we use that type of transportation because it provides another protection of our environment. The environment is extremely important to be protected, and to have the utilization of not only public transportation, take as many cars off the streets as possible, but in addition to that, to make it possible for all of us to transport ourselves on bikes. I'll be the first one that will be using the new system when I go up to Temple, or when I come back out to Temple, or when I go over to Pennsylvania, West Pennsylvania, which is the grounds where we have set forth. And we need to expand that even longer so that I can ride it all the way to Chestnut Hill and leave my bike at Chestnut Hill and come back. So I think it's important to allow all of us. It's great also for your heart, for exercise, to keep myself young and vibrant.
Thank you. Ms. Marie Bailey. And candidates, remember, please introduce yourselves too. Folks, we haven't done that.
My name is Melissa Murray Bailey, and I'm the Republican candidate for mayor. So while I hope you all come out on May 19th, I also hope you continue to follow the campaign, have the chance to vote for me in November. I'm running for mayor because I love the laughs in the audience. I'm running for mayor because I really believe that we can be better as a city. And if we continue to do the same thing, it's hard to imagine how we're going to be able to have different ideas. I saw your tweet out to us earlier today about who took SEPTA in transportation. I took SEPTA on the way home from work here today. And public transportation, walking, biking is a huge centerpiece for my family. We spent 5 years without a car, and when we finally got a car, we drove a Prius. The environment is important to us. I have a young daughter, and we walk to school each day. And I love the aspect about the platform that talks about fixing the sidewalks, because when I'm taking her off her scooter, it is quite dangerous. And I'm very concerned about her hitting the bricks that are up and not being able to ride anymore. I'm not a politician. I'm quite new to this. I run a business in my day job, and I'm just like most citizens. I really worry about things like, is my daughter going to be able to go to the public school? As well as, is she going to be able to go to the playground where there was just a shooting a little while ago? When is it going to be safer? And so the issues that are important to me are about keeping families in the city and removing barriers to do that. I think mobility is a key aspect of that, as people like me are very conscientious of the environment as well as our health. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Kennedy.
Hi, my name is Jim Kenny. I'm a candidate for mayor, 2015 primary. Spent 23 years with city council, lifelong Philadelphia, from South Philadelphia. And when the bicycle movement first began to become effective in Philadelphia, and bike lanes and other things were put in, I would consider myself Paul of Tarsus. I was not exactly a fan. And I was one of those lifelong Philadelphians who were somewhat resistant to change and complained about being in a single lane of traffic when the bike lanes were being used, and didn't understand I couldn't turn, I couldn't do this. And what I learned was over time, when we started to talk to people and understand what it was about, you began to have more patience, number one, you began to understand how important it is, number two, and then you opened up your mind and your attitudes to changes. And these changes are very, very important for our city because, as has been said, we're the most bicycle, not friendly, but bicycle used to be in the country. That means that young people, and who want to live in an urban environment, but not be married to an automobile, and not be married to a parking space, and not be married to a parking lot, will come and live in Philadelphia. The easier and more facility we give to those folks to live their lives the way they want to live their lives, in an environmentally friendly, healthy, and less expensive way than filling up your gas tank. So when it comes to bicycle lanes, and people complain to me now, I say, relax. Just think about sharing the road with everyone. The sidewalks belong to everyone, the streets belong to everyone. And one of my pet peeves, however, is I can't stand those guys, those developers who take the sidewalk and just put that construction tape, the crime scene tape around the poles and take it and put up cyclone fences. I can assure you I will be an animal as mayor when it comes to taking that stuff down and making sure we have sheds and lighted pathways and sheltered streets, sheltered pathways to walk on if we have to actually encourage the streets. So I'm here to listen, and I'm here to expand on what's been done by the Nutter administration, which has been terrific, and to move it forward even further.
All right, thank you. Mr. Oliver.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Doug Oliver. I, too, am a Democratic candidate for mayor here in the city of Philadelphia. Also a lifelong Philadelphian, grew up in the Germantown section of the city. My love affair with bikes started as a kid. I think probably with all of us when we came downstairs on Christmas and hoped there was a bike under the tree or near it. I always wanted a Huffy or a BMX. That's what all my friends had. I actually had the banana seat and the new handlebars and try to pretend I had that little crossbar. I don't know what it was for, but that's my earliest memory of the bike. We used to put little playing cards in the wheel, make it sound like it had an engine. But nonetheless, that was my earliest memory. But I recall the bike being the way to explore my neighborhood and get a sense of independence and start to feel myself as a child and feel that independence that I think carries on through adulthood. That not too soon thereafter, I worked at Bike Tech at 1234 Locust Street, unloading bikes out of trucks and putting them together, taught my friends how to put them together. And now as an adult, there was a long time I wasn't riding bikes, but now as an adult, I'm rediscovering that sense of freedom and exploration that I had as a child. I got my track a few years ago and started to rediscover all the bike trails and realized it's a completely different experience. And I know we were talking about bikes, Bike Coalition, but now as a candidate running for mayor and realizing I can't afford to drive downtown and park, pay $25 every single time I park, I rediscovered public transportation. It's not what I remember from maybe 15 years ago when I was in the public transportation system. It's clean, it's well lit, there's cameras, everybody's using it. That's one of the themes that I think is going to advance the ball for us, when everybody sees this not as a center city thing, but as a neighborhood issue. Investments would be easier to make in those situations just because it's a shared experience here in Philadelphia. So as a mayor, I would focus on bringing biking and mobility, public transportation to communities all across the city so that we look at this as part of our city. With that, I'll close.
All right, thank you, Mr. Street.
Since I'm the only one here that nobody knows, my name is Bill Street. And if it's about bike, cycling, walking, there's only one question for me: how do we get it done? I tell you a whole lot. It's about cycling. It's going to improve the question is how do we get it done? The follow-up question for me is, how do we get it done so we can participate with it safely? If you can't walk your dog without fear of getting shot, then one of the things that we have to do, no matter where we do bike paths, is make sure that the city is safe for us to be able to enjoy it with freedom of mind, peace of mind. I ride my bike not too long ago when I went to 33rd Street and I was going to Fairmount Park, and there were some guys walking out there, and I gotta tell you, my heart started beating hard. I said, oh, what am I ready to run into now, you know? So, is it safe for us to ride our bikes, and is the community safe? We have to do something about the violence, and that's the only reason why I'm taking this time out of my life to get involved in this election of mayor. If we don't do something about the violence in the city, then not much is going to really matter. Because people aren't going to be here. They're not going to be here. And you have to be safe. You have to be safe no matter where you go. Center City, community, arts, down the drive, colleges. You have young people that won't come to Philadelphia to attend one of our 5 colleges because the parents are saying that it's too violent, too violent. So my mission is to try to do something about the violence and have a comprehensive plan to do that, which you'll hear about later.
All right, thank you, Mr. Street. Thank you, candidates. We're going to start with our first question. I'm going to toss this to Ms. Abraham. I should say you can only stay with us until 6:45 or so, is that right?
About 7 o'clock.
About 7 o'clock, all right, great. All right, so this is the question for all the candidates. We'll start with Ms. Abraham. I think it's fair to say that there's a perception in some circles that some of the issues we'll be talking about tonight, like bike lanes, pedestrian amenities and the like, are really crucial issues for a certain segment of Center City millennials, but kind of extras for other segments of the city. That this is sort of an elitist set of concerns that we might be talking about. I'm not saying that's what I think, I'm just suggesting that that perception is out there in some circles. And I'd like to hear what all the candidates think about that perception. And I think it is fair to say it exists in some circles.
I must confess, I don't know how that's possible. Mobility, the fact that we are providing ourselves with great chances to enhance our mobility, pave our streets properly, fix our sidewalks, get on bicycles, have bicycle racks on buses, and use the trail systems that we're hoping to expand and build on. There can't be anything more elitist than walking around a great American city, which has lots of paths and parks and walkable streets. The addition of new parkways and greenways and walkways enhanced by the Bike Trail Project, again funded by William Penn Foundation. There's nothing elitist about it. If anything, it brings people together because it brings people out of their houses, and instead of being in cars and not talking and polluting the air, we're meeting, we're talking, we're comparing notes on which trail to take and which way to go. I think there's nothing better and more humanizing than walking around right in Center City, Philadelphia, or any place one lives.
All right, my time's up, sorry.
Thank you, it's quite all right.
All right, Mr. Woodward, what do you say?
Center City millennials, that term, Tony has said that he rejects. And he rejects it because there are millennials in Thailand, there are millennials in Tacoma, there are millennials all across the city. And the problem is that we've often, again, put these false choices in Center City versus neighborhoods. The great thing about the better mobility agenda, and what Tony has been going around the city saying, is that it's about connecting neighborhoods. And not making the choice between is it good for Center City or is it good for the neighborhoods. It's good for both. And the extent to which the Philadelphians can connect with one another by connecting neighborhoods, whether it's through bike lanes, trails, whether it's through paving streets better so we're able to move very easily from one neighborhood to another. We need to figure out that the one Philadelphia vision Tony's talking about is not here. By making sure that we implement this agenda fully. There are millennials in all parts of our city.
All right, thank you. Mr. Diaz.
Yeah, as a young public housing boy living in Harlem, I wasn't able to learn how to ride a bike because of the busy streets and impossibility of being able to ride. So I was a teenager when I learned how to ride a bike. And then when I moved to Philadelphia and was living in East Oak Lane, a guy named Packer used to take his bike when I was a public defender all the way from East Oak Lane all the way down to his office down on Chestnut Street. And so there was a real opportunity to see that people wanted to utilize this as an opportunity not only to exercise, but also to have an opportunity to get to work without having to pay the expenses when you're doing public service. In addition to that, I think it's important to understand that everyone wants to have this access. It's not only those who are in Center City, but those who throughout what age you are. And I've had employees that continue to use their bikes to work.
Absolutely. All right. Mr. Bailey.
I think this really highlights the importance of integration of the public transportation, of the bikes, being able to have bike share at public transportation locations so that people throughout the city can be mobile in every aspect. Part of the platform is really about making intersections more safe as well so that pedestrians can have a safe way for them to cross streets and get where they're going. And some of the most dangerous intersections right now are actually outside of Center City. So this is a problem that we need to address in both the neighborhoods and the city. And one other aspect of it is, part of my platform is about helping people to get better jobs and out of poverty. And biking allows them to get to work in a much less expensive way for those who aren't able to afford cars.
Well, we're having this forum in a Quaker space, and the folks that I'm looking at now are not elitist at all. It's a very working class issue. And it's a working class issue, and it's a citywide issue because all, as I said in my opening, all of the space in the city, all the sidewalks in the street, are shared space. It's not, ours do not own the park, ours do not own the highway. And that is, again, a cultural change. People bike not just because they want to exercise, but because it is their mode of mobility to get to work and get home. And to get, I see moms with cars with the baby seats on the bike, and people who are going shopping with the baskets on either side coming from supermarkets and the like. I mean, this is an everyday thing that we need to make sure people are safe. We need to expand the opportunities for people outside of Center City and Northern Liberties and South Philadelphia and other places to have access to inexpensive biking opportunities. And that's bringing ride share out into the neighborhoods, but also creating a situation where it's not necessarily credit card driven. There's another way to secure the deposit of the bike without credit card, without everybody has.
Okay, Mr. Allen.
The question is there a perception that it's elitist? And I think the answer is yes. We can look around this room and we do not see a diverse room. I think that's part of the reason there's a perception that it's elitist. As much as we like the idea and the concept of one city, and I think that it's a vision for the city, it's something we should aspire to, the fact is we don't have one city. Right now we have people that are worried about being shot, people worried about getting jobs, and if there's a perception that the mayor is focusing on bike trails instead of public safety or schools, then it looks like we're not doing a job for one community versus another. One of the things I enjoyed most about going to New York City was riding their subway system and realizing that you could have a bum, a CEO, and a mayor all sitting on the same train. And because of that shared experience, investment in that was easier. I think that we can overcome this perception simply by some of the things that are already underway, including the expansion of bike share in the communities. Zone 1 was more focused on Center City, but there was always a Zone 2. And now that we're at the point where we can start bringing those out, now it's not something that's being done for them at the expense of me. This is something that's coming to communities, driving public transportation. This is about mobility, not just about bikes. So as we look at our public transportation system, we see a better job happening, and that starts to help break down the sense that it is an elitist issue, because it doesn't have to be.
All right, Mr. Street.
Yeah, I think there's a perception, but there's a perception. That perception is supposed to stop us from expanding biking, it's supposed to stop us from following through the program we have. I don't think so. It's always going to be a perception. That's something. We have all these people in Philadelphia, 1.5 million, they're not going to have one perception about everything. So there's a diversity, and one of the reasons why we have found in Philadelphia on that perception is because, we have some reckless things. Some people who don't ride the bike safely, run through their lights, they come off buses, they do whatever they have to do. And that makes the general public sometimes angry, and helps create a negative perception. Did you go that? Okay, thank you. Yeah, but it helps create a negative perception. But I think that our agenda has to go forward in terms of creating bike paths, creating walking paths, and expanding cycling, regardless of the perception.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to take the next question here. Go to the other side of the table with Mr. Street. We'll start with him. Suggestion from one of my favorite readers. How did you get here tonight? And what mode of transportation did you use to get here tonight? And prior to your campaigning days, what mode of transportation did you use to get to your job, in your daily commute?
I started cycling because of a couple of reasons.
Run a 30-second answer.
Yeah, okay.
Tonight.
I cycled a lot. I cycled to work, but I drove a car too. So it was unknown weather, unknown a lot of things, but I did not cycle.
All right, Mr. Allen.
I take public transportation every day. I find it a great way to interact with the electorate as you're running for mayor, but I also now find it a great way to commute to work every day, regardless of whether it's an election or not. It's just comfortable, it's easy, I don't have the headaches. Tonight I walked here, and once again, the weather's starting to break for us, hopefully. And so that's my primary mode of transportation. Previous to this, I drove all over the place, and now I'm kicking myself for having done it because I'm realizing how much easier it was than I thought it was.
Mr. Kennedy.
I walked here this evening, I generally, before the campaign started, would use public transit and more days a week than I did use it. I've also found that if you're crazy enough to go to a sporting event and drive without taking the grocery subway, you're crazy. and I've also found that when I can park my car for the entire weekend, I go to work Monday a lot happier than I did parking on Friday.
All right, Ms. Margaret.
I took accepted here today. My husband takes the bus to work. My daughter takes the bus to the library, to her play groups. We are completely integrated into the public transportation system. We have a specific whiteboard on our refrigerator to note where we parked our car, because sometimes it's 3 weeks or a month and really hard to figure out where our car is after that much time.
All right, Mr. Diaz.
I have a 10-trip ticket.
Thank you.
Easy Metro from New York City. I have the Amtrak process, and I also have the Metro in Washington, D.C. I use nothing but public transportation. And the way to get here essentially is fast and easy. I read my newspaper, I read my emails, and by the time I get to work, I can be very comfortable in doing what I have to get started to the work.
All right. How does Senator Williams get around?
Traveling back and forth between Harrisburg, he probably likes every now and then. But he often drives. I can't speak for him today, but I can speak for our communications director, and I would walk and often take pictures.
All right, Ms. Abraham.
Every day I either take the bus or walk to and from work. Campaigning, however, is not permitted you to walk from northeast Philadelphia to southwest Philadelphia. So during campaign time, I use a car.
All right, Mr. Woodward. Vision Zero. All of the candidates are on record prior to this event as supporting Vision Zero, which is, of course, the pursuing a policy of zero traffic deaths. My question to each of you is what specifically would you or your candidate do to advance that goal? And I want us to be specific here, guys, as much as possible. This is a 1 minute answer. 1.5 minutes. 1.5 minutes. All right.
The very first that by 2020 will reduce traffic-related fatalities in half. The focus specifically, however, is on using data, particularly from the police department and the streets department and other places, which we've already identified where the pedestrian deaths are, the pedestrian fatalities are, and primarily they're found in low-income communities. And so using the data, creating this team, this task force that can develop an action plan to move forward by the end of the first term. Tony is absolutely committed to this. One thing I'll say about this is much more serious than simply reducing fatalities. There's a significant cost to the traffic-related fatalities experienced in Philadelphia, almost $1 billion related in cost. And these are real people's lives we're losing and real dollars that we're losing. So the idea around Vision Zero is sound. The implementation will be important around bringing together very different organizations and city agencies. But that's why you need a consensus builder, someone like the senator who has been involved in doing this type of work for 25 years, bringing people together to solve difficult challenges, and he looks forward to doing that as mayor.
Just yes.
You really have to start with putting cameras in crosswalks. You have to put sound systems in the crosswalks so that people know what lights are going which way. And you have to essentially make sure to put enough time in the crosswalks. You have to make sure that you have some more protection for children in particular. And the children particularly, you have to put a lot more crossing guards wherever available so that you can protect the children in the crossing guard. These things are simple and in any way, no magic can be done. and have been done in some cities, and for some reason we decided to do the nothing process, which is happening with many of these politicians who continue to vote the right way but don't do the right thing.
Ms. Murphy?
Vision Zero is something that's obvious for us to embrace. Airlines don't accept that there will be deaths, so I don't know why we would accept that in the case of traffic accidents. Vision Zero was modeled after Sweden and Stockholm, of which the company I work for is headquartered there. So I've had the opportunity to see this in action and see people biking to work and walking safely everywhere. As mayor, there are some just do it's that I think we should get to right off the bat. I think extending the walk signal so people can safely get across the street, whether it's with their groceries or in a wheelchair or with a stroller. We need to make it safe. The second is we really need to pay attention to the turn lanes. We have biking paths across Spruce and Pine, and it gets quite dangerous when we get to the turn lanes. I think that's something we have to look at. And also, data-driven and results-oriented. So we need to get government and bureaucracy out of some of these decisions that they don't need to be making so that we can actually get some things done by leveraging the data to keep people safe.
I have received one red light camera ticket in my life, and it was the last one I ever received because it cost me $100, and now it changed my behavior. So when I come up with an intersection in my car and the light is turning yellow, instead of putting my foot on the gas to get through it, I put my foot on the brake because I don't want another red light ticket because I don't know where the cameras are. We need to enforce the speed limit, which is the most direct thing a police department can do. We do not abide by the speed limit in school zones. We do not abide by the speed limit on our city streets. And if you go, I was just walking Northern Liberties the other day on North 2nd Street, that 2-lane highway that just is, it's insane on Ray Street in Old City. That 2-lane highway towards 95 is a speedway. And police I need as mayor, instruct the police commissioner, start writing some pretty heavy numbers of tickets in the first 6 months to 8 months of the administration to change people's behaviors. Same thing when it comes to being rude when someone's crossing an intersection. That is the worst thing I can think of. Is one of the worst things I see is a senior citizen trying to get across an intersection when this goofball needs to get somewhere, he's going faster than he needs to get there, and what creates a dangerous and scary situation for people crossing the street, lady with a stroller, a senior citizen, anyone. We need to enforce the speed limit in the city, and we haven't done it for quite some time, and I expect that's the first step, in addition to working with all the advocacy groups to highlight the data-driven issues, extending the cross cameras, and just be more proactive in our enforcement of all.
I appreciate having had the opportunity to look at the Bike Coalition's plan. It's a lot like standardized testing here, which they have to test. So a lot of the answers have been given to us, and so certainly some of the things that haven't been mentioned already, and I do agree with a lot of things I've heard, also includes raised intersections and stop signs. It does change the mindset that when I see a stop sign, I begin to slow down rather than the mindset of yellow light means hurry up and speed through. Red light enforcement also worked for me. You don't get more than one of those tickets, right? You definitely slow down. But I think the biggest asset that we have here with Vision Zero is really starting to change the thinking of how we think about pedestrian and bicycle safety. Eliminating deaths is just sort of, that's the big vision, getting it down to zero. But it's hard to advance the ball on some of these fronts for some of the reasons we talked about a little earlier tonight. So having all of the mayoral candidates and all of city council just beginning to think about what Vision Zero actually means that when it's time to advance the ball on small fronts along the way, it's not such an uphill climb. And so I obviously support Vision Zero and some of these things. I think we can make advancements on early in the first term of the next administration.
Mr. Street.
When I first heard Vision Zero, my mind went to the state, because it is the state that licenses people to drive. I'm up in Levitt Avenue up there where they have the driver's license test, and I said, wow, I'm trying to find out how many people pass. You stand there and you watch. When they give the test, that test is not anywhere near what it needs to be for for the issues that you run into on the street when you're driving. And you sit down and read a book. So if you want to have Vision Zero, you want to stop the fatalities, then it's going to have to be a state issue too. I think we're going to have to start educating people a little more thoroughly and give them a little more extensive driver training test before you license them. Secondly, my problem is the turn on right. You know, you can turn right to right on red. That's a problem. I've watched it, I've seen it. It's confusing for some people, and it creates issues. The second issue, the third issue that I see is some of the inner cities, you have a number of people driving who are not licensed. They just jump in the cars and they drive and they fly through the streets and they ignore the traffic signals and whatnot. Maybe they don't even understand it. They know how to drive a car, but they don't know anything about traffic signals, driving, and all the other things. So it's going to be a very difficult issue.
Save your hand.
Actually, Philadelphia has probably one of the highest rates of unlicensed and uninsured drivers of almost any city. It's astounding. By the thousands and thousands, and car stop by the Philadelphia Police Department has in part affected that in a good way, where the person is told to pull over, the car is parked, the person is either put on a bus or told to get a cab, and the car is eventually impounded. I think we have a good source of data to use from AID, the Accident Investigation Police Department, National Highway Transportation Administration. I think red light cameras have been helpful, but there are many people who go through red light cameras thinking either they're too fast for the camera or will use a bus as a shield for the camera, that the bus will have its license plate taken but not the driver. I also think that more study needs to be made of elder drivers. We have a huge population of elder drivers, and elder drivers tend to get into accidents more at left-hand turns because, especially when there's oncoming traffic, at speed and distance are difficult for older drivers. So that's a consideration of how we can eliminate or ameliorate that situation. I think also the thing in Europe that has been very effective have been these so-called street diets, where you trim the number of lanes, and they're frequently painted so that you can see them easily, and you know that the traffic lanes are being reduced from, let's say, 3 lanes to 2 lanes, and there's a gradual cut, so that's extremely helpful.
All right, thank you. Philadelphia lives or dies by its transit system. Right? We've got 20% of homeowners who don't own a car, 50% of renters who don't own a car. For them, public transit is essential, and I think a lot of us would like to see those with cars use public transit more. As mayor, Mr. Oliver, what would be your top ask of SEPTA? And how will it improve, transit access for Philadelphians? We're talking about a 1-minute answer.
One of the things that suggested the city can do to help find funding for schools is to keep the city open a little bit later in certain districts. I think that additional revenue will fund the schools, but keeping the city open later kind of means providing ways for folks to get around a little bit later as well. Right now, public transportation, at least on SEPTA, is open on weekends for a little bit longer, but I'd like to see them to also expand their hours later into the evening as we push towards being at least an 18-hour city, if not planning to be even longer. Also, by expanding public transportation, we also expand access to jobs, which is the other piece of it. Those third shift jobs that people can have access to, like using public transportation, traveling at late at night, 11 p.m., 12, and coming back at 7. They don't feel alone on the streets. And so my biggest ask for SEPTA would be to expand public transportation beyond just the weekends.
All right, Mr. Kenny, your top ask of SEPTA.
Better coordination with our universities, some of our younger folks to later bus routes, to allow our university students and others in those neighborhoods to utilize buses in a later fashion. There's a lot of these young folks come to the city to come to be educated. They want to recreate the city, and one of the things they talk about is that they can't really depend on SEPTA at certain times of the day or night. I think the other thing they can do with SEPTA is to require a lot more either natural gas buses or electric buses that are smaller in size that can be used in the later night shift, instead of dragging those big buses and there's double buses together on late night shifts with 3 people or 2 people in the bus. A smaller, casino size bus makes more sense, and if they're electric or natural gas, it would be better for the community and the environment.
Great, thanks.
The thing about Ambassador SEPTA is to run on time. There are lots of people who need to get where they're going, especially when they need to get to work, and they need a predictable schedule of buses and trains that can get them there. There are also lots of children who take public transportation to work, to school. And so we need to be able to pick them up at school at predictable times as well. Now, SEPTA has been making strides in this, adding a route from Lincoln High School to get the kids from there and take them to where they're going, which is super important. So on time, it gets people to work and where they need to be in a manner that is predictable, which will make them take public transportation more.
Yes.
My top ask is to try to enforce and get more security. There are so many folks who are very afraid to take the SEPTA line late at night as a result of many of the incidents that have occurred, including people who are pushed into the middle rails and other incidents that night. And my second opportunity would be to try to elongate the Broad Street line into the Navy Yard. I think it would be important because it would be very good access both to the stadiums and to that incredible developing community up in the Navy Yard. So I think those are 2 things that would be extremely important in order for us to make SEPTA a lot more usable.
Tony is a former board member of SEPTA. He is supported by the Transport Workers Union, which is SEPTA's union. And as a state senator, he worked to pass Act 89, which brought about $700 million to SEPTA for capital improvement projects, for which they now have a 10-year capital improvement plan. So given that background and support and deep knowledge of SEPTA public transit, one area that Tony is particularly interested in is the revitalization of the Center City Concourse. It's 3.5 miles of talk about connecting spaces and places. 3.5 miles of underutilized commercial corridors, opportunities for interactivity, to attract tourists, to attract residents, to connect them into the central hub, whether going to neighborhoods or going to the suburbs. It's an absolute opportunity. The senator has been able to bring money back for those improvements and looks forward to implementing and connecting Center City to the neighborhoods through the concourse as mayor.
As mayor of Philadelphia, I would ask several things of SEPTA, but certainly one of them would be to extend the subway as close to the Navy Yard as humanly possible, since that is a huge employment hub, thousands of new jobs down there. The second thing, a little less costly, obviously, is to make sure that all the bus drivers pull up to the curb flush, because many times the buses pull up and sort of pull out of the curb, which means that people have to step down into the street. Then the bus may have to kneel, and it creates a falling and a tripping hazard for many of our seniors. And third of all, I think that one of the things that people are concerned about most is SEPTA subway lines and other places where women are capable of being sexually assaulted, raped, because it's dark, or because there are doors that are open, or there are places that a camera in the subway system cannot detect predators and victims. And that means it's a huge safety issue for women.
Mr. Street.
Yeah, a large community in the inner city that uses SEPTA on the weekends. And to use SEPTA on the weekends is a real experience. I mean, it is art. It's painful. Because you have to, the timing is just off. Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't. I get the 3, 6, 7 sometimes. And you have to wait hours to get on the phone trying to figure out when they're coming. The second thing I would accept is, look, we have to do something about the SEPTA buses when school's coming. Schools turn out, children get on there, these young people in schools at this time. And it has to be made safe. I don't know if any of you have ever been on it. You be on a SEPTA L or subway when schools turn out. I mean, there's absolutely no respect for anybody on the subway, on SEPTA. So I would deal with that. That was something I have on coalition with SEPTA. And if you do that, you're going to get new riders on SEPTA. a lot of people won't ride at certain times of the day because
Thank you, Mr. Street. On to the next question here. Let's talk a little bit about the condition of the city roads. There's 2,500 miles of streets in Philadelphia. The repaving budget has been chronically underfunded. There's a 900-mile backlog on the street paving schedule. By my calculations, it can take about $6 to $7 million a year simply to meet the streets department's schedule goal of repaving every 15 years, which in and of itself not be often enough. So the question for the candidates, and we're going to do this one briskly, just 30 seconds here, is would you seek to increase the budget of the streets department? And if so, how important a priority is that for you? And I'd ask you to consider the many other funding demands that exist for the city. So is increasing the funding for the streets department, paving budget a high priority item, a medium priority item, or a low priority item for you? And Judge Diaz, we're going first, again, just 30 seconds on this one.
As you may know, my principal purpose for entering this race is because I believe if any of the people have made the concerted effort to fix our schools, I think it is the most important element of this campaign. And financially, once we fix the schools, we will be able to bring businesses, bring other opportunities to the city, which should increase our tax base. And as we increase our tax base, we can increase our expenditure for the things that are necessary, including the paving of roads.
All right, Mr. Bailey.
I think that's really important is that we have to make sure that we're attracting jobs and businesses to the city as well as keeping young families in the city. Until we do that, we have to figure out how to spend our money wisely without asking for more money from our citizens. So getting the streets paved, so a taxi will go down Broad Street is really important, but making sure that we're funding the education of our kids is really the most important thing.
Mr. Kennedy.
The coordination of streets, PICO, water, gas, and any other utility that opens up a street needs to be paramount in their coordination. You can't grade a street, pave a street, and then allow the other utilities to come back in, including our cable companies, to come back in and open the streets. One of the reasons why we have as many potholes as we do is because the streets are breached on a regular basis by many different utilities and other types of users. We should not be, the streets department should not issue a street opening permit for a brand new street unless it's an absolute emergency, or it should coordinate the street paving with making sure that the other utilities can do their work first before you cover over the street.
All right, Mr. Albright, again, might I ask questions about the road paving budget? Increase or not, and if so, what priority is that for you?
I think that maintaining infrastructure is a core function of government, and for that reason, I think that adequate funding for paving would be a priority. That said, I don't necessarily think we have to raise taxes to do so. I think the coordinating effort is one, but also double checking and making sure that our contractors who are doing this work are rebuilding the roads at the levels that they should. We know some random core sampling might demonstrate that they're not preparing them properly, so they break down faster. That in addition to the weather. So I think that's just one idea.
It's a priority, but it's not a top priority. It falls down in the middle somewhere, just because of finances. When I was in Harrisburg, I had Allegheny Avenue, which is on that street, that's a 5-year program or 7-year program now. But looking at the budget the way it is now, you're not going to find enough money to do crime and education. It's just not there. It's just not there.
Ms. Abraham.
Given the budget realities of the city, it doesn't seem appropriate to me to raise the budget for the streets department. However, I must say, coming down 3rd Street this morning, there's a hole in 3rd Street that's 5 feet wide by 5 feet wide. It's almost a moon crater. And is there anybody here who doesn't lose a tire or two coming down Philadelphia streets or break a leg or an ankle crossing them in the winter? Of course, this is something about Northern American cities, but I'd like to know who has our city contracts, how they are spending that money, how effective and efficient they are.
The overall year $1 point. This comes from, paving comes from the capital capital budget, not from the operating budget. Very important piece to remember. The last thing I'll say is potholes. Please, if you see them, at Joint Team Tony, hashtag pothole patrol. We're looking all across the city for potholes and finding too many. 720 potholes were fixed on Tuesday alone. It's a community effort. Let's all do what we can to find the potholes and get them done.
All right. 2012, City Council enacted an ordinance that makes it considerably more challenging for mayoral administrations to install bike lanes, or to have bike lanes put in. They need council approval on any bike lane that removes lane traffic or parking. The question here is sort of a twofold one. One, is that an ordinance you would seek to convince council to repeal at all? And if you were unsuccessful in that or opted not to do that, how would you work with the council and specifically district council members to get bike lanes installed in a coherent way so you can follow an actual bike lane from one district, council district to another without craziness in its hand? The question here is to you, Councilman Kenny. You started, you voted for that, right?
I would have been a long ago voter, and I understand the frustration of district council people, not only on bike lane issues, but on almost every issue that they face relating to this particular administration. The key to any type of effective government is communication. You're going to do something, then you need to at least talk to all the stakeholders and talk to the other elected official that's in the district, so you don't have to wind up with a piece of legislation that hampers your ability to get it done. If your transportation person is talking and liaisoning with the council staff and the district councils, you can work out your problems before the paint goes down, and you can figure it out together. When you see council trying to take more and more power away from the mayor's office, it's because there's a lack of communication cooperation between the mayor's office and council, and that's going to end January 2016.
I think that there is too much bureaucracy in the government, and there are too many decisions that are left to the council that they're not experts on. I think we need to trust experts with these types of decisions so that we can get things done more quickly with less cost and less committees.
The real problem is the games that play the city council with regard to voting the right way just to pay yourself for a run for office. What's important essentially is that you have a real relationship with the president of city council, who essentially should get the 9 votes that are necessary to do what you have to do. And the best example, the best model that I've seen is the relationship that they'll have with John Street. One of those relationships is you gotta know that it is important for everyone in the city. The city is not the mayor, and the city is not the city council. The city is everyone's responsibility, and thereby get away from these egos and do what's necessary to make these lanes possible.
The one thing I'll say about Tony's record is that it's quite clear that he is a consensus builder. You can imagine a Democrat from Philadelphia being responsible for pushing forward a sales tax increase for education for Philadelphia public schools, cigarette tax for Philadelphia public schools, and a one-time $45 million state grant from a Republican governor passed and signed Republican legislature. It's quite difficult, but it takes a particular set of skills. It takes the ability to bring people together who won't always agree, but you have common ground and you're operating in the common interest. That's the type of mayor that Tony will do. And I can't stress enough the importance of having a mayor who understands how to work with the city council, how to work with the legislature, whether it's Democrat or Republican. But he has a proven track record of doing that time and time again on quite difficult issues, and he will continue that type of record as a mayor.
It's a pretty lame excuse to say that just because the mayor may not have communicated to council's liking, they take away the power of the people that have a bike lane, so you only get it with the approval of your district councilman. I think it really just enhances the notion that this city is divided into 10 boroughs or fiefdoms, and you have to please the local council person to get a bike lane or a curb cut or anything else done. This is not a function of the mayor not kowtowing to the council president. This is a function of council trying to usurp too much power unto itself to the detriment of every voter in this room.
Street.
I would repeal it if I could. That's the first thing I would attempt to do. But I think the people here need to understand the critical power they do with a key purpose. And if it's your purpose to get things done, then you need to identify people who are running for council right now that embrace your purpose. And you can make a big impact on where council can go to advance your agenda by making your decisions between now and May 19th. Yeah, I would come to Sheila right away.
We may not like a lot of things about our government the way it is in the current structure, but it is what it is. And if we want to advance the ball on any front, including issues related to federal mobility or anything else, we've got to find a way to have executive and legislative branches of government working together. I believe that the role of a mayor is to serve as a vision setter, a team builder, a strong communicator, and a cheerleader. And I think this approach for anything that we're trying to get done is absolutely necessary. So when we're trying to advance the ball on bike lanes and all sorts of things, having those individual conversations with council people to get them to buy into the vision first before you go out and announce what you're going to do is going to be absolutely critical. Asking them to pilot a program and see how it goes might be a better first step. And this is really the personality approach to getting things done in the city, not just an issue approach.
All right, I'd like to ask a short question here about a specific bicycle infrastructure project that is getting some attention and chatter. We have, of course, the DNC coming in a short period of time. Philly Bike Shares coming this spring. But Philadelphia doesn't have a protected bike lane. Many other cities are adding these. Would you support the creation of a protected bike lane from 15th Street out to 30th Street Station along either JFK Boulevard or Market Street? So that's a specific bike project that we're going to talk about here. Ms. Mary Bailey, questions to you.
I've had the opportunity to live in lots of cities where there are protected bike lanes, and my husband is a very avid biker. Since we've been in Philadelphia, I'm very scared every time he is out on his bike, and I don't think that we should be scared of biking in the city. The data shows that along JFK Boulevard, there are more lanes than necessary for traffic. So I would support a protected bike lane.
Great, we're going to do these ones in 30 seconds. Councilman Kennedy.
Yes, I mean, you need to coordinate and communicate with both the council people and the community members to roll out something that you want to do. The mayor is not an enlightened monarch. We live in a democracy. And you need 9 votes to pass just about anything you need to pass. And you're not kowtowing to the council members, you're communicating, you're dealing with them, you're listening to their concerns, and you can work anything out if you talk to each other. And protected bike lanes can be a thing of reality in Philadelphia if we work together to get everyone's viewpoints heard and then move forward with a coherent plan.
Mr. Oliver.
It's something that I would support, but I need to know how much it costs and what physical protection are we talking about. Obviously, that's going to drive a lot of the cost and ultimately the final decision, but the idea is something that I fully support.
Mr. Street.
I support it.
Excellent.
I can't say whether I support it or not. Right now, knowing what I know about Kennedy Boulevard, I wouldn't for this reason. John F. Kennedy Boulevard, from roughly 17th Street onward, is the home of thousands of senior citizens who sometimes don't always pay attention about where they're walking. And I'm concerned about speeding bicycles and senior citizens creating an accident-prone situation where more people would be injured or even killed by the speeding bicycle. So I think while I favor the notion of it, I don't know whether that's the best street for it, even though it is wide. And it does create a funneling situation for lots of cars getting onto our expressway. So I'm not sure that that's the best street for it, but I certainly would support protected bike lanes.
Tony would work with the community and with the council members to make sure that moves forward. But that's a conversation that would have to happen at that point with those entities in mind. I'm sure it's something we support, but something like that should be community-led, community-driven, and advocacy-based. And so bringing everyone together at the table would be the approach.
Yeah, I think in New York there was great leadership in protected bike lanes. If you go down Riverside Drive, you see that you can go all the way almost from all of to Manhattan just by a protected bike lane. People thought it was not going to work, and it's been very well used. And even down Times Square, where people thought that Times Square was prohibited area, there are protected bike lanes. You need the leadership of someone who has that vision. Bloomberg had good vision with regard to that, and I think we should be able to likewise make some provision.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lee. Okay, we're moving now to the jump ball portion of the forum here. I'm going to ask some questions that I'm not going to move into the order. This is an issue that you'd like to weigh in on. Just let me know, raise your hand, and then we'll do it that way. So if Stu Bykowski were here tonight, he'd probably be asking a different kind of question, such as, what will you do to crack down on road cyclists who flout traffic laws and endanger themselves and pedestrians? And second, do you consider that such bad cycling, how significant a problem do you consider such a bad cycling behavior to be? Anyone? No? Okay.
I think it's,
Stu would be disappointed.
I think that it is a problem. I know I get frustrated when I see it. I saw cyclists happening in the back of my truck when I was driving down the street. I didn't appreciate it. Thought about slamming on the brakes, did not. But I do think that part of what cracks down on that sort of poor road behavior is accidents. And I have not yet seen a bicyclist beat a car accident yet. They always end up losing into that deal. And so I think part of it starts to self-regulate when the car drivers get upset. So I don't know that as an administration you can stop something as mobile as a bicyclist from doing things that they're not supposed to. You just can't do it. But if enough accidents happen, they will watch themselves. I think it starts to self-regulate.
Sure.
It's a major problem. You have young men who are messengers, they use their bikes and they drive around, they packages and whatnot. They get a little reckless. But generally, overall, when I ride through San Jose, I ride in the summertime, people are pretty respectful. I mean, I would say 97, 98, I got noticed that. The students riding to school, out at the Walnut Street, the University of Pennsylvania, and whatnot, I don't see it as a real major issue.
All right, moving on to our next question. The city sidewalks are, as was noted earlier in this forum, frequently appropriated by construction projects. And I'm wondering if any of you will have a plan in mind to address that problem, or would requiring developers to accommodate pedestrians, would require developers to accommodate pedestrians create too much additional expense for developers and thus discourage transit? Mr. Kennedy.
Passed the bill to require, and the enforcement is lax, and the enforcement in my administration will not be lax. But I introduced the bill before I left, requiring a $1,000 a day fee for the closure of the sidewalk. The problem with these sidewalk closures is these guys move their equipment and their workers from job to job. You can have a sidewalk closed, for example, in the 200 block of Arch Street, which has been closed for about 3 months. I haven't seen workers there more than 6 days. So if you de-incentivize them to close that sidewalk by charging them $1,000 a day, it's going to cost them more money unless they get it done faster. And if they get it done faster, the sidewalk gets open to them. It is not their sidewalk. So when you see someone that puts a cyclone fence up that takes a lane of traffic and park their work trucks, they're all getting towed. The parking authority is going to be on notice that if you see a work truck parked behind a cyclone fence in a neighborhood, anywhere in Center City, the truck gets towed. You give one warning, the truck gets towed out into the cyclone fence and taken down. It is an absolute disgrace to watch people who are visually impaired walk down a sidewalk with a cane or something and then walk smack into the cyclone fence when you didn't have a chance to get up to them and stop them. That's going to absolutely stop, and they're going to pay for the closure of the sidewalk.
All right, anyone else on that question? Yeah.
I don't know if Councilman Kenny is, that's discretionary, or does it take council action to do what he's going to do? Okay. I just want to make sure that he's not making promises that he can't keep.
All right, last sort of jump ball question here. We've talked a lot about sort of the safety benefits tonight of Vision Zero. I'm wondering if any of you think there are other advantages to Vision Zero and some of the other issues that we've talked about today. Are there benefits that go beyond safety to creating a city that's more friendly and safer for pedestrians and for cyclists? Just Margaret and then Judge Diaz.
Yes, I think there definitely are. We talked a lot about funding and cost, and the cost to the city is exorbitant for the traffic accidents that we have here each year. So by eliminating that, we would not only be protecting people's lives, which is of utmost importance, but we would also be saving money for the city, where we've talked about many programs that are in desperate need of money without having to raise taxes. I think secondarily, keeping people in the city and attracting people into our city. As millennials are graduating from college and looking for where they want to settle down, they want to have a city that provides great work-life balance and integration for them. And if we have a city that is pedestrian, mobile, friendly, bikes, parks, then they're going to want to come here. And then it's our challenge to keep them here. But if we provide that for them, then it's going to make our city more attractive for people to come and stay.
Yes.
Yeah, but for making a priority of the 21st century, transit options will really extremely be helpful to making the city more attractive to families and to seniors. In addition to that, something that I've been involved with in a long time is to try to reduce the carbon footprint. That gives us a real benefit in terms of the environmental asset that we can get out of that, not only for us, but for the world.
Connecting bike trails, connecting our trails, making sure that our public transit is strong. All of these things will take cars off the streets, which will improve air quality in Philadelphia. Expanding this to low-income neighborhoods that lack access to healthier foods will improve the health and wellness of the folks in those low-income neighborhoods. And frankly, making Philadelphia, having better mobility in Philadelphia makes it easier for tourists to get around, to experience our neighborhoods all across the city. And so there are economic benefits, there are environmental benefits, there are health benefits, and that's why Vision Zero is so important. That's why implementing this plan will take someone who can bring city agencies together to implement the plan, and that's what Tony will do as mayor.
Okay, anyone else on that one? We're going to move to some questions from folks in the audience. We're going to do these in a sort of jump ball fashion too, so if you want to chime in, then please do so. This is an interesting question. How do you plan to build a relationship between drivers and cyclists so that drivers can see cyclists as people riding bikes and drivers as people driving cars? Sort of a civility question here. Anyone want to take on that?
I think it's an expanded education. I had my own education in this regard. I was an angry driver too. But through thinking about it, reading about it, meeting with people, interacting with people, we start to understand, again, as I said earlier, that all of our public space belongs to all of us. And we have to use it safely and equitably. And I think it's an education process. It's also something we can do in schools. It's something we can do in inserts. It comes from something we can add, ask the state to add to our licensing test requirement, things of that nature. I think it's just a continuing progression of education and interaction.
Anyone else on this one?
I don't think you're gonna be able to do anything about that much. I don't want to offend anybody, but everybody that gets angry, and when you get some people, I drive with a group that gets angry, they always seem to be happy. They get put. You're a little mad because you're out there riding the bike, and you can't go. I don't know anything about that.
All right, I got a question here from the audience that I'd like to ask here. The subject that's near and dear to my heart. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Diaz. Would you, as mayor, prevent all parking on the apron of City Hall, aka the City Hall parking lot?
No question. They have to try. They continue to try it, and all these judges continue to violate it. The city council people continue to violate that order, including the mayor. Violates that order. it is not necessary to continue to have oil and mess that apron up when it's totally unnecessary. You've got parking on the side, you can hold that, they've got parking on the street. They're all alternatives to parking. And it should not be violent for any reason, just for the convenience of somebody walking out of the door trying to get into their cars.
January 2016 it ends. It's over, it's just done. There's no, I came into council in 1992, that Dilworth Plaza was a parking lot, it was a disgrace. And there were 30, 40, 50 cars in there. And when street cleaned it off and got rid of the cars, it was a totally different venue. That's one of the most iconic buildings in this country. And we're going to clutter it with somebody's vehicle because they're too lazy to walk from a parking lot or a curbside spot. That building is a beautiful building. We've spent a lot of money making it more beautiful again. Dilworth Park is just a stunning accomplishment. And get the cars off the sidewalk. Period. We're going to get to
I agree. I understand we have to stop it out with the exceptions on the programs.
Is there anyone who has a different point of view? I mean, one would assume that there's some political hits that a mayor would take for action on banning parking. Judges that one might irritate, elected officials that might be put out. Is it worth it to take that political hit? Everyone seems to say yes. Does anybody think that maybe it would require a little more thought?
No, I would go a step further. I would not only take it off the parkway, I would take the cars. I mean, why do they need cars? Why do they need cars? No, but I mean, why don't they drive their own personal cars? I mean, why do you have to spend $25–30 million a year for elected officials to drive cars? Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Take them off the sidewalk and take the cars. It's a human car. Right?
All right. Here's another question. And we'll jump off that again. The worst street in the city is Roosevelt Boulevard. People die there all the time, way too often. What will you do to make Roosevelt Boulevard safer? Oh, let me do Mr. Hold on a second. It's the jump ball. They're all jump balls.
Roosevelt Boulevard recently qualified for a federal grant to help study how to restructure it and refine it. That's something that Tony has been looking at. That's where not a majority, but a significant amount of the pedestrian deaths are in Roosevelt Boulevard. So this is an area, this is a space that needs to be better connected. The space needs to be reviewed and reutilized. It's an area of focus for Senator Williams, and I know that as mayor, will continue to move forward in that regard.
It is a straightaway drag strip. And the way that you calm the traffic is by taking the straightaway away and putting things there that with curb extensions into the lane to make the traffic have to bend and slow up. If you go down the Schuylkill Expressway between the zoo and 470 and 676, the traffic always clogs up there because it's curved. If you can put elements into Roosevelt Boulevard at the worst sections of Roosevelt Boulevard that curve it, you're going to slow down the traffic and slow down people getting killed. It is a drag strip. That's the worst design highway probably.
Is there anyone else who'd like to chime in on that question? Here's another one. Philadelphia Police Department is the traffic enforcement agency in the city. Traffic enforcement isn't a huge priority for PPD, at least not in many sections of the city. How do you candidates plan to help change the attitude and mindset of the PPD? They are our first line of defense, writes this member of the audience. We're going to do this one jump ball too. Anyone else have a comment on that? Mr. Oliver?
Yeah, I do think that the police are focused on what they should be focused on right now. And if they had to choose between protecting lives in neighborhoods and responding to emergencies, they should continue to do so. But I do think using technology to assist their efforts, red light cameras. I don't look for cops when I see a red light camera. I look for red light cameras when I get to intersections because I know that that's coming no matter what. You can't talk your way out of that. It's coming. They take a picture of the whole night. So I think technology is a way of doing so. Police officers can continue to keep our neighborhoods and communities safe.
Does anyone have any view? Would anyone else here like to see the police department prioritize traffic enforcement?
The problem with the question is that Joe Ball asked answer. It's not a jump ball answer. It's a multifaceted answer to the question that you can't disform and really do justice to. Nice shot. It's way too complicated. There's so many facets of policing and other issues that you need to deal with relative to traffic control and ticket writing and that kind of enforcement. It's longer than, I'm sorry, it's longer than jump ball. But yeah, does it need to happen? Absolutely.
In New York, and I've read it, and matter of fact, I've been going up there, they have what they call auxiliary police. People they hire from the community to deal with traffic control and those kinds of things. If you go to New York now, you see someone out there directing traffic. They look like police officers, but they're not really police officers. They're called auxiliary police. You can look at them on the internet or whatnot. And it works to a degree. I don't know whether the financing would be available in our budget right now for that, but that's one way to control traffic. And that's something I would definitely look at. To hire not the police officers to do it, but these auxiliary police that will deal with these type of issues, traffic control.
Yes.
Traffic control has to be better managed. And when you have rush hour traffic, there should be a process of rush hour traffic. Outside of that, there should be a very slow passage of the continuation of low-speed traffic. And you heard one of the panels here, once he crossed the yellow light and got a ticket for going through that red light, he didn't do it again. So you got to put a lot more opportunities to get more tickets, more revenues, and more lights on the road so people then begin to obey the signals.
All right, most of the sidewalks in the city are any sort of novel plans from the candidates to improve sidewalk quality in the city of Philadelphia.
We pay people to take tires and put them in landfills. We have a huge tire recycling issue. We need to have a huge tire recycling issue. And there have been things that I've been looking at over the years as the chairman of the Committee on the Environment I established when I was in council, back when Council President was council president, is this fascinating issue of rubber sidewalks. I mean, it sounds kind of bizarre, but it really isn't, because they're made from recycled tires. And they come in large blocks that are locked together on the sidewalk. They're impervious. They allow the roots of the trees to grow, so the roots grow naturally downward as opposed to growing up, trying under a concrete slab, they keep growing up to try to get air. So we can start looking at replacing, having maybe a manufacturing opportunity, a job creator, a recycling operation, and then also providing opportunities to replace our sidewalks with something sustainable and that makes the environment better.
And would that be a city sort of managed project?
No, I wouldn't intend on bringing a private sector company that knows what they're doing, giving them the raw materials, which are the tires, and allowing some of our employees, some of our citizens to be hired at low-skilled jobs with a higher salary.
Anyone else have an idea on the sidewalks?
I think the sidewalks for young families are really dangerous. Most of the moms in the city have to buy all-terrain strollers just to be able to get their kids to daycare, and scooters, forget it. I think there is a way that we can partner with the neighborhood associations, and several neighborhoods are doing a good job sharing the cost with citizens so that people can get their sidewalks fixed without shouldering all of the costs themselves. So I think it's just another way that we can really encourage neighborhoods, people to get closer with government as opposed to further and further away.
All right, we'll have one final audience question here, and then we'll go to closing statements. Question is, I see more and more congestion in Center City, with buses often threading their way through traffic. How can we prioritize bus traffic to increase bus speed and ridership? It's a congestion question. So how do you prioritize bus traffic, bus travel over private car use? Dedicated bus lanes is what we're talking about. So bus traffic. All right.
You have to talk about what street you're talking about doing this on. I mean, we have dedicated bike lanes, which we all think are awesome, and we want to expand them. Dedicated bus lanes are in the bike lanes, which I kind of really never understood that buses and bikes in the same lanes seem to actually be great fit, but I think that's all the space you have. And when you start running out of space in the parkway, there's only so much you can do. One of the things that I'm looking at now is this electronic opportunity for both fire apparatus and police apparatus to have a light changing sensor on the vehicle itself, hooked up. The Perceptor is willing to do this, partner with them to pick up the cost of the transmitters on top of these signals, so that as the fire engine is going down the street, from a distance the light would change to green, so there would be no cross-traffic problems. SEP is willing to put that. If we're willing to put the equipment on our vehicles, they're willing to put the equipment on the signals.
Okay, all right, let's move to closing statements. And we started with Ms. Abraham for far end. We're going to start with Mr. Street for the closing statements. We have 2 minutes for the closing statements.
I have, like I said, I think in the beginning, included in this because we're right out in the middle of the North Philadelphia. We don't have quality of life with the violence that's going on. We have a 3-year-old child that was shot dead, 2 pregnant mothers that were shot dead, a 15-year-old child who was going home from school who was shot dead. We just had a police officer shot dead about 7 blocks or 4 blocks from that. So my particular issue in terms of this campaign is that if Philadelphia is on progress, we have to stop the violence. The violence is absolutely have to stop. We stop the violence in the schools, in our schools. So I think the way we're going to do that is we're going to have a community surveillance network, sort of a dragnet. It costs $40,000 a year to keep a person in prison. I think from the numbers that we put together, we can give them a job, an entry. These are entry-level people. With a pilot program that they will become the eyes and the ears of the police department. And when we move that whole attitude out in the, I don't like to say hood, but in the community where don't snitch. You have to understand that 96% of the people in the inner cities are good people. Those people out there who are the bad people are the people who we need to control. My heart was broken the other day, and I'm very sensitive about this when a 50-year-old man was out walking his dog, and 14 or 15-year-old child shot that child dead. I mean, that Philadelphia will never be able to be what it can be until we stop the violence. There's 2 reasons why businesses won't come to Philadelphia. One is violence, and the other one is the inability to hire a productive workforce. If you can't hire a productive workforce, why set up a business in the city of Philadelphia? You'll be hearing more about this from me as I go on, but that is the cornerstone and foundation of my campaign to stop the violence in the city of Philadelphia, and I think I have a comprehensive plan to get that done.
All right, you guys got to practice that 2-minute closing action. That's perfect. Mr. Oliver.
Let's close by thanking you all for convening this group, this opportunity to speak to you. I appreciate it. My campaign is focused on 3 things as well. I do think violence is very, very important, but I do think it's a derivative problem. My campaign seeks to address core problems. We could probably all name 10 different problems that the city has, but I'd say 8 of them occur because we don't adequately address education first and jobs second. If you show me a city that's educated and a city that's employed, I'll show you a city that's safe. I'll show you a city that recycles. I'll show you a city that wants to create open space. I'll show you a city that can readily embrace Vision Zero. I'll show you a city that has a growing tax base. I'll show you a city without pension problems. I'll show you a city that addresses all of the challenges that it has. And so for that reason, I'm focused primarily on education, job creation. And the third isn't so much an issue as much as it is an approach, and that's fairness. I think we too often pit charter schools versus district schools. I think we pit business versus union. I think we pit center city versus neighborhood. And I don't think it's necessary that it be that way. And I think the mayor has to think and act with a mindfulness for fairness, not only for who wins, but for who loses with every single decision. And so we're going to continue to use these last 60 days before May 19th to advance this agenda, to earn your vote, to answer your questions, and I hope that you will all consider it on May 19th. For anyone who wants to know more about my policies, feel free to go to our website, DougOliver2015.com, DougOliver2015.com. Thank you again for the opportunity to talk to you tonight.
Thank you, too, for being here this evening. I think the hallmarks of the Kennedy administration will be universal pre-K for 3 or 4-year-olds, 28,000 children in our city that don't have access to a quality pre-K. Making our schools the center of communities again, community schools, having services in our schools, having every department in the city of Philadelphia focused on how they can make school environments better. A robust reentry program for people returning from incarceration, making sure they don't go back. Milton Street is right, $40,000 is a ridiculous amount of money. It's a college tuition for a really good school. Making sure that this community, this administration looks as diverse and as diverse as the city is. I'm a smart person, but I'm not the smartest person in the room. And when you think you are the smartest person in the room, you're not so smart. So having people around you that are smarter than you, that are innovative, and that make the city a city of innovation, city of ideas, not closing up your mind to any 56-year-old guy trying not to close off my mind to any other ideas and any other types of ways of looking at delivering government to you, having the passion and the fairness in my heart, things I've stood up for over the years, LGBT rights, immigration rights, getting rid of ICE holds, extending benefits to transgender folks who work for our city, standing up when we need to stand up, and being fair. And that I have the passion and the intelligence to do, but the people around me are going to help move the city forward, and you're going to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, as well as to all of you who contributed to the Vision Zero platform. It truly is an example of people getting together to help solve some of the challenges that the city is facing. I'm here running, not because I'm crazy, but because I'm tired. I'm tired of the same old thing and hoping for different results. That's the definition of insanity. And I don't think any of us here are insane. I want us to have an innovative government that doesn't have incremental changes, that is really going to take the bull by the horns and make the difficult decisions that are going to push our city forward. I don't want Philadelphia to be less attractive anymore than the surrounding suburbs. The amount of people who are getting up and going to other places because it's too expensive to live and work here, because we're not sure what government is doing with our money, and because they don't want to raise their kids here because of the schools and the safety. So as I'm preparing for November, I'm really interested in getting to know you all better and hearing what are the issues that you're facing, so that I can make sure that each citizen in Center City or in the neighborhood is really represented in what the Philadelphia of tomorrow is going to be.
Yes. Despite the fact that I have not had an elected office for the last 45 years, I've served the community. I've been involved in the founding of the Black Boston Association to open up and change the aspect of Temple University Law School and then the Temple University itself, today being a great institution. I've been on the board of Temple University. I helped and was involved in children education. I was the first member of the desegregation task force that was formed in 1973 in the school system. And one of the problems that I see is people keep talking but not executing. I have the executive experience to be able to do what's right. I was able to, as General Counsel of HUD, reform public housing not only in Philadelphia but throughout the country. I was able to do and reform the court system in Philadelphia in 18 months and save $100 million and get rid of patronage. So my executive experience, both as city solicitor, knowing every aspect of the city programs, give me an opportunity to get rid of the SRC so that the SRC really is returned back to a school board that is controlled by the parents, and the parents essentially will be able to dictate what the roles are and what we should do in terms of the future of the educational programs of our children. In addition to that, I think that we should put a moratorium on charter schools until we know what the funding is going to be like. We have not decided how to get the funding, and until the funding is solved, then we can do that. And I also believe that by doing what we're talking about today, it's an asset to be able to put bike trails, transportation opportunities, and the quality of life efforts is a real asset for our city, and it's an important concept that we all should treasure. But it shouldn't only be with Center City. It should be also developed with the neighborhoods, so that the neighborhoods can be connected and have those opportunities of transporting themselves back and forth throughout the city. And that's important because all we do is talk about the fact that We can do it here, but we should be able to do it all around the city.
As I started earlier today, I told you a lot about what Senator Williams has done, but again, I want to tell you a little bit about Tony. He lives in the same neighborhood he grew up in, and when you're looking for a mayor, you're looking for someone who shares your values and someone who's demonstrated leadership. When he was 29 years old, he started a small vending business that got him a sense of what it took to grow an enterprise here in Philadelphia. 2 years later, at 31, because of what went on in his community, a young boy was shot and killed. He started and founded a nonprofit that chased drug dealers out of their communities. A year later, he ran for office as a state rep at the age of 31, and 10 years later, he became a state senator. After 25 years in Harrisburg, he's the second-ranking Democrat in the state Senate, the Democratic whip, and is responsible for, again, building consensus to move significant legislation that benefits Philadelphia and its citizens. Today, he's running for mayor to build one Philadelphia, a Philadelphia that rejects the false choices of the past and moves forward together to create the future that we all deserve. We'll do that in 3 ways: by fully funding our schools, creating a partnership with Harrisburg and not an adversarial relationship, and look at education as a cradle to career continuum, not just schools. Focusing on certifying daycare centers and making sure quality and affordable daycare is in every neighborhood for every young family. Making sure that, yes, our neighborhood schools are community anchors, and that we're able to actually extend high school using job training dollars and expanding our early college programs. So when young people graduate from high school, they don't just graduate with a diploma, they graduate with college credits and, in fact, a credential. On thriving economy, making sure we attract more jobs to the city. He's going to cut the wage tax to put more money in the hands of working Philadelphians and reduce the business income and receipts tax to attract more small businesses and make sure that Philadelphia becomes a hub for civic innovation and social entrepreneurship. And then finally, safe and clean streets, making sure that we have an effective partnership between the police department and the community, using body cameras as well as SafeCam, expanding the SafeCam initiative.
All right,
businesses.
2 minutes. We're going to be
Thank
back
you.
there. All right. Thanks to all the candidates for coming out. Alex is going to say a few words as we wrap up here. Appreciate it.
So thank you, candidates, for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Thank you, all of you in the audience, for taking the time to come out and hear those thoughts. And I'd like to extend a special thanks to our moderator, Patrick Kirkstrom, for doing a great job for us tonight. And then just a reminder that this work that we have done on how it is that we can build for Philadelphia Mobility 2015, and particularly our Vision Zero initiatives. This was an effort of many different groups. And so I just want to say thanks to those groups as well one more time, which is Bike Share Philadelphia, the Clean Air Council, the Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, Feet First Philly, the Philadelphia Parks Alliance, Pennsylvania Environmental Council, Penn Future, Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, Penn Trans, and 10,000 Friends of Pennsylvania. And then one last thank you, which I want to put out there, is that the work of the Bicycle Coalition, the work that we were able to lead in putting together this coalition, would not be possible without the members of the Bicycle Coalition. And we are on a mission to add 350 members in the month of March, and we are 100 members short of that goal. So tonight we're hoping that we can add a few more of you to our Bicycle Coalition group. And so thank you for taking the time, and have a safe ride home.
Hey, it's like C-SPAN, but more boring. Come on. How you doing? Good.